A quick response to two comments which have been made about the Lebanese extraction. First of all, if we have people in Lebanon or Afghanistan and we've given our word that we are going to look after them, then we need to keep our word. But Britain has demonstrated both in Afghanistan and now in Beirut, both in Kabul and now in Beirut, that it is incapable of keeping its word, and that is shocking in a country that prides itself on having a an efficient navy and playing around with the big boys. We are proving to be really quite inefficient and incapable, and part of that is because of our overwhelming bureaucracy and our inefficient bureaucrats. So it's one thing to have a tight bureaucracy and to be busy box ticking. It's another thing to not have enough bureaucrats to do that, to carry out all the paperwork necessary. So yes, I'm not knocking Britain unnecessarily. I'm knocking Britain because there are absolute standards, and we are falling below those. So DJ Bog says, you're talking rubbish. The first plane landed on Wednesday. We are on our fourth plane now. Why do you always knock Britain? We should have been on our first plane long before Wednesday. People were well aware of the crisis looming. And instead we were crowing about having 600 soldiers in Cyprus. So what? Have we heard of the 600 soldiers doing anything particularly since then? We should have boats ready to take people out from the ports, and instead we are dependent on civilian structure when the roads to the airport in Beirut were already demonstrably impassable even before Wednesday. So it shouldn't be any great surprise at people being left behind because we're not thinking out of the box. Cosmic Dragonian says, seeing you crow how the UK are moral against Russia, then moaning that the UK are rubbish at looking at their own, goes straight over your head. Maybe you could do a bit of explaining this fact. First of all, I have never said at any point that the UK are moral against Russia. This is absurd. I have had an absolute standard, and Russia fails, absolutely, or the Kremlin fails, absolutely, and Britain scurries to keep up. And again, I impose an absolute standard, and I measure things by that. But I have never compared Russia to the UK. So you're inventing a paper dragon and then trying to spear it like some sort of inane St. George. Louis Disbury says, has it occurred to you that Britain should never have been in Afghanistan in the first place, so no good crying over spilt milk? It's irrelevant whether Britain should have been in Afghanistan. I think probably not. But the fact that we were in Afghanistan means that we have a responsibility to our own soldiers, the civilian support, and particularly to the Afghans who supported the British military while we were there. And we have failed absolutely to honour that commitment. Absolutely. And even now, years after the 2021 evacuation, there are still people caught in Kabul who cannot leave, or caught in the countryside around Afghanistan who cannot leave. And that is, again, down to our failure, the failure of our bureaucracy, the failure of our teams, and the failure of our understanding, recognition of our ethical responsibility. We should deal with reality as it is, not with reality as we would like it to be, but we should still be able to honour our commitments. If we give a commitment, there is no time limit on how we honour it. We need to be utterly committed to honouring it, and if that means we're still honouring it in 5 years' time, we honour it in 5 years' time, because that is the commitment. If somebody is prepared to put their life on the line to help us, then we must be prepared to do the same thing. There isn't a point at which we say, "Oh, I've had enough now because I'm too grand and I've changed my government." It doesn't make any difference. We still have that responsibility of the commitment that we gave, and we go all the way back. We could say this is part of the problem that we are inheriting now. That we've got people like the Balfour Declaration and Lawrence of Arabia making commitments to two different groups of people in the period around the First World War, and the absurdity of the sort of bifurcate undertakings. But it is possible to be committed to two completely different groups of people at the same time. It's certainly possible. We have two hands. We can do two potentially contradictory things at the same time. We don't have to be consistent, but we do have to be honourable. And what Britain is demonstrating is something that Russia demonstrates perfectly well: a lack of honour and a lack of commitment, a recognition that reality and rhetoric do not cohere, and that is shameful. And it's not that we measure ourselves against Russia. We don't. We measure ourselves against an ethical responsibility, an abstract ethical responsibility. This is the goal, and we fall below it, as does Russia. But it's not a comparison between Britain and Russia. That's what a ridiculous idea. So, Cosmic Dragon, back of the class, please.